picking up on the schema, I'd like to point out that even though you can't see this in great detail, on the left here, we are focused on a series of medicines which help improve case management today. Case management of uncomplicated malaria, case management of severe malaria, and eventually, in the next year and a half, improved case management of relapsing malaria, Vivax. But there's also work in chemo prevention, which, if I think back on the last 10 years, 8 years, 9 years I've been at MMV, chemo prevention didn't have the same promise or excitement, and this has actually evolved very nicely in the last 4 years. Chemo prevention for vulnerable populations. So let me just describe how some of this feeds into the business plan focus for the next 5 years. Uncomplicated malaria treatment. The backbone of treating uncomplicated malaria is artemisinin and combination therapies. With the exception of a few places in the world where you can treat Vivax with chloroquine, assume for the sake of simplicity, it's about the ACT family. Notice the 5 ACTs that are referenced there. On the one hand, we are at a time of a luxury of riches. We have, as a community, as a treating community, as a case management community, never had so many potentially powerful drugs to be deployed in treating uncomplicated malaria. The stewardship of how we take the 5 approved ACTs and make these available to countries, make sure that countries understand the advantages of these ACTs. And frankly, looking at the composite of these, how do we use 5 different ACTs to delay the eventual arrival of resistance? You heard the earlier discussion from Cambodia, from the triple ACT study area. It's great to look at new combinations of 3 ACTs. For now, what we have in Africa, and will have candidly for the next 5 years at least, is dual combination ACTs. How those are used could actually strategically help delay the onset of resistance. This is both an opportunity and a responsibility. And so we take this very seriously in talking to countries about how the use of these ACTs could delay the spread of drug-resistant parasites. David mentioned the vulnerable populations. At the heart of who the most vulnerable populations are, development of new pediatric treatments for uncomplicated malaria is a mandate for all of the ACTs that we're working on. In the pipeline, you will see that we're backfilling all the ACTs with a pediatric child-friendly version. If we haven't done it yet, we're making it a priority to be done in this coming business plan. This is very important, moving down to the 3rd bullet point, suppositories for pre-referral management. So severe malaria took a great, the management, the treatment of severe malaria took a great leap forward in 2010 when our partners Guilin brought the first pre-qualified injected artesunate treatment through the pre-qualification pipeline. And WHO very quickly positioned this as the optimal, preferred way of treating people with severe malaria. And yet, the missing link here has been when you are miles and hours away from accessing severe malaria treatment, and yet you are critically ill, what do you do to buy time? So this missing piece, the pre-referral management of severe malaria, has been premised on having rectal artesunate available at the community level. It wasn't until really the last 18 months that we were able to get one of those drugs through the Global Fund's expert review panel. In this coming business plan period, there should be 2 of these available with pre-qualification. And most importantly, it's not about launching this as a mass use drug. It is about making this something that program management thinks of as a missing link and how they will actually improve the overall management and referral of sick patients. So this is one of the missing things that will have a lot more impact in the coming business plan period. And then lastly, this chemo prevention. When Alan was speaking about that missed window of opportunity in young children to stop them from getting ill, and by the time they get to 5 or 6, I think Alan said, if you've missed a chance to diminish chronic illness in those children, you're dealing with a lifetime of kids working against odds. It's actually kind of makes my hair stand on it. It's a chilling condemnation of what we want to absolutely avoid happening, which is why this profile of chemo prevention regimens for small children is so it's hard to overstate how important this has been in the past 5 years and what the next 5 years can offer us. So mainly what we've seen in the Sahel region and West Africa is 11 plus countries deploying sulfadoxine pyrimethamine plus amidiaquine SPAQ. The uptake has been remarkable. The embrace has been tremendous. Practitioners, donors have all come together to really make this take off. And yet there's a lot more left to be done with that intervention in the coming 5 years. Number one, to create redundancy in supply. We want to have the world have at least 2 sources of this chemo prevention. And secondly, it's not just the Sahel that could benefit from seasonal chemo prevention. There are other places in Africa that would benefit from it, but we don't have the right drugs yet. That would be a key focus area in the coming business plan. You're not expected to see the names on this, but every one of these drugs that are in the launched space have partners behind them. And though I can't go through each of the partners, every one of these is making an impact today because behind every one of these, there's a pharma company that's worked very hard to get the drugs through approval and is now focusing on making an impact with these. So some of you are here in the room, some of you aren't, but as we say about our R&D, we say about access. Impact is a function of partnerships. And these really are this bouquet of flowers has many gardeners, and I do want to acknowledge that it wouldn't be possible without the continued support of our pharma partners. So let me be very concrete in my last couple of minutes. These are things that we have prioritized as deliverables in the next 5 years. I've touched on the high level, now let me get granular. So in the uncomplicated malaria space, we have a commitment that all the ACTs that we've been working on, for which we have developed evidence that they are safe, effective, and can transform the treatment of uncomplicated malaria, should all be available through WHO treatment guidance to malaria endemic countries. Secondly, we need increased manufacturing capacity for pediatric and adult pre-qualified DHA piperacin. Again, I've talked to you about how supply chain matters when you get into country context. We need to have this important drug available in the next 5 years, child, adult formulations from more than one supplier. In severe malaria, I've talked to you about this rectal artesunate product. We have a very concrete goal to make sure this is deployed in at least the top 10 high-burden countries with the proper supportive introduction framework for this to be used in severe malaria management. Because severe malaria, really 5 years ago, was just, these new treatments were just getting uptake, we've thought it very important to begin supporting the best practices that are evolving by sharing this information as widely as possible across countries. So we just now in the last 5 months begun this transformation process of creating a global information clearinghouse. We hope to really make this a community of practice space where pre-referral and referral management of severe malaria can be shared across countries. And then lastly, as I've talked about again, it's also important that this product, injectable artesunate, does in fact have multiple suppliers, making sure the marketplace is secure. Lastly, on chemo prevention, we will be working on a second child-friendly SPAQ for SMC. We'd like to make sure that it's referenced in the essential medicines list, which also guide countries. And then lastly, the diversification of upstream API. The active pharmaceutical ingredient for this very common drug ran into some bottlenecks in 2015 and 16, and we've taken it on as a priority to make sure we don't face that bottleneck of active pharmaceutical ingredient supplies in the future. And so with that, I'll bring you back to this big picture. Again, I've taken you through some of the very concrete next 5 years of activity, but we do bleed into the work of our development partners, and Tim's going to talk to you about the drug development, translation, and early discovery. But in this space, in the next 5 years, we will be working after tafenoquine comes through regulatory approval, we hope, in 2018, to make sure that countries can begin looking at how to bring on this new transformational way of treating vivax malaria. And so in here, there is a lot of interstitial linking between what our development teams are doing. And I think with that, I'm going to ask Tim to take you through some of the pure development deliverables for the next 5 years.